What more can I say about Capcom's Resident Evil, the game that made the genre of survival horror known throughout the world? It would spawn an entire movie franchise, live action and animated. It would also become one of the most profitable series for Capcom, next to Street Fighter and Monster Hunter. Resident Evil would change the face of horror games forever. And who would be responsible for this amazing series? A man by the name of Shinji Mikami.
But there's one simple reason why I'm reviewing this game. It's Halloween. I mean, what better holiday than to review a survival horror game than on Halloween? I mean, doesn't make any better sense to me. But why am I reviewing this game? I mean, it's a GameCube remake. Well, simply because most people don't even know it exists. So I really don't care if it's not old. Anyways, here we go.
Before we begin the tale of Resident Evil, we must first go back to the Nintendo Entertainment System in Japan. In 1989, a game going by the name of Sweet Home was released on the Famicom, alongside a movie of the same name. So not only was Sweet Home a great horror RPG, but it was also a licensed game. Sweet Home was all about a film crew trying to find the frescoes of the Mamiya mansion, although rumor has it that the mansion is haunted. When the crew enters the mansion, they find that the rumors are true and that they are now trapped. Your goal in the game is to find the frescoes, unravel the mysteries of the Mamiya mansion, and finally, to escape the mansion alive. The game was known mostly for the chilling atmosphere and its death penalty, that being, once a party member is dead, they stay dead. No revives or Phoenix Downs here. If you want to get a closer look at Sweet Home and why you should most definitely play it, go check out the Happy Video Game Nerd's review on it. Fast forward to the era of the Super Nintendo. In 1995, a survival horror point-and-click adventure was released for the Super Famicom, and was later ported to the PlayStation, PC, and WonderSwan. The game was called Clock Tower. Clock Tower would become a cult classic to the enthusiasts of the survival horror, and would also become one of the pioneers of the genre. The game was centered around 4 orphan girls that were adopted by a woman named Miss Mary. Miss Mary then takes the girls to the Clock Tower. It's pretty easy to see where the game got its name from. After entering the Clock Tower, you find that the place is pretty big. Miss Mary goes to find the owner of the establishment, but she isn't to be found for quite some time. The other girls go ask you to look for her, but before you can, a scream comes from the front hall. The girls are gone, the lights are off, and you're alone. Defenseless and alone. After a while, you start to find your friends, but not in the way that you'd probably like. A man named Bobby has been killing your friends with a giant pair of scissors. Hence how Bobby probably got the name Scissor Man. Only that kinda reminds me of Mega Man a little bit, so I kinda tend to stay away from that term. Your objective in the game is to find your friends and escape the Clock Tower. Of course, without being killed by Bobby. If you'd like to take an even closer look at Clock Tower, I would highly suggest going over to clanofthegreywolf.com to check out Rue's 16-bit gems. It's a fantastic review, but for now, we're going to move on to our story. In 1993, a game by the name of Goof Troop, based on the Disney show of the same name, was designed by a man named Shinji Mikami. At the time, Shinji Mikami was a beginner of design. Goof Troop was the first game that he had ever designed. Soon after the release of Goof Troop, Mikami would start designing a game based loosely around Sweet Home, which was the NES game that we just talked about. The game would be known to become Biohazard, but over here in the States, it would come to be known as
Resident Evil.
An action-adventure game with 3D polygonal characters with pre-rendered backgrounds. It was released in 1996 for the Sony PlayStation, and was soon ported to the ill-fated Sega Saturn. The game would later be ported to the Nintendo DS, but this would come later down the line. Resident Evil was a critical success, spawning many sequels and spin-offs that are still being made today with the recent release of Resident Evil 6. The Resident Evil that we're talking about today came around the time when Mikami wanted the franchise to be GameCube exclusive. In 2002, 3 games were released on the Nintendo GameCube. Resident Evil 0, which is a prequel to the first game, Resident Evil 4, which is considered to be the best Resident Evil game of all time, and finally, a remake of the first Resident Evil. The Resident Evil remake, or remake, get it? Was released in 2002 for the Nintendo GameCube, and was re-released in 2009 under the Archives title for the Nintendo Wii.
I'll be playing the Archives version of the game, and they're simply because there are no visible changes. That's why I'm playing it. And when I saw this game, I didn't even know that it even existed. But that's not the point. So knowing that, why don't we jump into the story?
In Raccoon City, there have been a few bizarre cases of murder. There were some reports of families being eaten. In response, the Bravo team of STARS, or Special Tactics and Rescue Service, is sent out to investigate the raccoon forest northwest of town. After a few days, STARS loses contact with Bravo team. After contact was lost with them, Alpha team is sent in to find out what happened to Bravo team. After Alpha team lands, they find the remains of one of Bravo team's members, who has been eaten. After searching the forest for more clues, Alpha team member Joseph is attacked by what looks like to be a half-eaten dog. The dog isn't alone though. Soon, the entire team is attacked by a pack of these dogs. Alpha team is frantically running away from the infected dogs, when in the distance, they see an ominous-looking mansion. Upon entering the mansion, depending on who you're playing as, one of the team members goes missing. While taking a chance to regroup, shots are fired. While investigating the mansion, you encounter your first zombie. The feeling of dread that you get in this moment is unbelievable. You have no way to defend yourself. You're backed into a corner, and the only thing that you can do is run. This is one of those moments in video game history that never gets old. If you've played this game, then you know what I'm talking about. After this event, you're given a 9mm gun. Then from this point on, it's you, alone, in a mansion full of mysteries and puzzles. Will you make it out alive? Will you save your friends? Or will you embrace the threshold of survival horror? Resident Evil was, and still is, a very well-made game that stands the test of time. It's also probably one of the best-looking GameCube games on the console. But more on that later. To control your character, you use what has been known to be called tank controls. Essentially, pressing up moves you forward, and pressing left or right will change your direction. Some people think that these controls are clunky, but I've never really had a problem with them. And even if you do have this problem with the controls, they aren't that hard to get used to. If you don't believe that this game wasn't about the survival, you will be disproven faster than a zombie can eat your face off. There are a few key items to your survival: your trusty 9mm pistol, some fuel and a lighter, and your brain. No, not the character's brain, your physical brain. You need the pistol to defend yourself from the zombies wandering the halls of the mansion, or any other gun that you manage to pick up. You will need the fuel and lighter to burn the bodies of the killed zombies, but more on that later. And finally, you need your brain to solve the many puzzles of the mansion. While exploring, you've probably gone through a few doors. Back on the PlayStation, Capcom cleverly hid the loading times of the game by using these doors. At the time, it was genius. But with the speed of the GameCube, these doors weren't really needed. So why did Capcom still leave them in? Well, allow me to try to persuade you. The doors are used to psychologically engross you into the game. Allow me to explain. When you walk up to a door, it slowly fades in to show you it. Most every door in the mansion has its own properties, like the dark wood or gates to a graveyard. As the door opens, you slowly walk into the darkness, unaware of what may be on the other side. But what could be on that side? A zombie ready to attack you? A difficult enemy ready to kill you with one strike? Or perhaps it's a save room. When you enter, you hear the doors close behind you and fade into the room. If the conditions are right, this moment here should be enough to put you under an extreme amount of stress and further engross you into the game. Calling me crazy? When you play this game, play alone, with the lights off and the sound up. This is how you should play a horror game. But trust me, if you want a good scare, you'll find it here. As you progress through the mansion, you'll realize that the mansion is just as alive as you are. You may find that as you wander the mansion, more enemies will appear. Most of the time, it's by zombies breaking into the mansion. For instance, take this hallway. If you're a seasoned RE fan, you know what I'm talking about. As you walk through the hallway, a window cracks. In the original game, zombie dogs would come crashing into the room and try to kill you. But if you pass through this hallway enough times, you'll find that the dogs do indeed break through the windows. It definitely threw me off the first time playing it. This leads me to kind of a different topic. Most of the mansion is completely changed from the original. Actually, according to Mikami, 70% of it was changed from the original. But with new changes to the mansion comes changes to the enemies. One of the new enemies is the infected daughter of George Trevor, who is the architect of the mansion. She is impervious to gunfire, so if you see her, run. The second enemy is easily one of the scariest enemies in video game history, the Crimson Head. So let's take a few steps back. Remember when I said that lighter and fuel are absolutely essential to your survival? Well, this is why. When a zombie is killed, it starts to slowly regenerate. Unless you got a headshot while killing the zombie, you must burn the body to prevent it from regenerating. But the problem is, there's only a certain amount of fuel to use. So more than half the time, the smart thing to do is to run away from the zombies than to actually use your gun. If you don't burn the body, the zombie turns into a Crimson Head. A Crimson Head is twice as powerful as a normal zombie, and it is also twice as fast. They can kill you in as little as one hit if they're lucky. Consider a Crimson Head punishment for not burning the body. And is it one hell of a punishment? Just remember, if you kill a zombie and you didn't get a headshot or burn the body, try to make an effort to avoid the room that you killed it in. If not, prepare for a quick and painful death. These fast-moving zombies probably had an inspiration from the movie 28 Days Later. On a final note, if I was going to put the Crimson Head on a top 10 list of most horrifying enemies, it would probably be near the top 3. Crimson Heads and zombies aren't the only enemies you'll run into, though. There are crows, giant snakes, giant spiders, hunters, and sharks. All of these enemies can be extremely dangerous, so instead of fighting them, it's probably best just to run away and preserve your ammo. Graphically speaking, this is everything a remake should be. Everything looks fantastically appealing to the eye. Believe it or not, to make the game look better, they actually used an old technique used by the original Resident Evil. It was called pre-rendered backgrounds. Essentially, you would create a room or a hallway, and then make restrictions as to where the characters on screen could move. Think of the restrictions as invisible walls. Because of this move, I consider Resident Evil Remake to be one of the best looking games on the GameCube. Even still, I think the game holds up today, and is probably one of the most artistic looking games simply due to the fixed camera angles in the game. And believe it or not, the music goes hand in hand with the graphics. While the remake has some creepy ambiance music, which you've been listening to throughout this review, what gets me most is when there isn't any music at all. It's just your footsteps echoing through the hallways, as well as groans from zombies just waiting to rip the flesh from your bones. this is definitely a game where you want to have a good pair of gaming headphones and turn the sound up. Trust me, it's a hell of a good time getting the crap scared out of you. Here's an example for you. One night while I was recording, I was playing with the lights off and my headphones. While exploring the mansion, I came across a hallway area with a crimson head in it. I knew it was there because I had heard it, but then as soon as I turned the corner, he was right there. I literally jumped out of my seat and ran away. It just goes to show that old games can still be scary. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I stopped playing Clock Tower just because I let the game get into my head. Well, in case you're curious, or you just haven't played Resident Evil, I'm going to finish up the story. So, you've been warned. Spoilers incoming. While exploring the mansion, you come across many documents concerning the pharmaceutical corporation known as Umbrella. In these documents, many test results of the monsters are described, as well as the termination of stars. Through many cutscenes, it becomes apparent that there is a traitor among you working for Umbrella. Many of your squad mates are killed off by this seeming traitor. Later, you discover the laboratories of Umbrella that are deep under the mansion. This is where the outbreak occurred, and explains why there are so many zombies throughout the mansion. While walking up to the big bad enemy, you find the traitor to be none other than Albert Wesker, which shouldn't come to a surprise to you if you've played any other Resident Evil game. He explains that he isn't just taking orders from Umbrella, but he is Umbrella. He had it all planned out from the very beginning. So to finish you off, he releases the Tyrant. When the Tyrant is released, it turns on Wesker by backhanding him back to the kitchen. Then he comes after you and starts backhanding whoever else is there, and yourself. After killing it, if you've collected all of the discs, you're able to save your partner. Oh yeah, did I mention that Wesker disappears and activates the self-destruct system? Oh, I didn't? Well, now you know. After heading up the final elevator, a timer starts, and at the top is an enraged tyrant that wants revenge. With the battle seeming almost hopeless, you see a rocket launcher fall from the sky. When you use it, oh, is it satisfying. The tyrant explodes. You and your partner escape by helicopter, and are just far away enough to watch the entire mansion explode. But what was going on in the city described at the beginning of the game, and in some documents throughout the mansion? Well, I guess that might have to wait for the next Halloween. Getting your hands on the remake of Resident Evil shouldn't be all that tough. Unfortunately, the game goes for a little bit more money on eBay, but there is also the same game on the Wii entitled Resident Evil Archives Resident Evil. This version tends to go for a little bit cheaper, but whatever version you buy, it will be well worth your money.
Well, thank you for joining me this Halloween, and I hope you enjoyed the review as well. And if you haven't thought about your ancestors lately, think again. I'll see you next time. Have a happy and safe Halloween.